Yeah.
Angel invested in like.
Oh, we're on. We're live. We're live. Hi, Patrick. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hey, Grace. Thanks for having me.
1 second. Let me just like quickly. I'm so sorry. Why is my computer froze? Okay. So I want to, before we start off the show, I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Nebius, the ultimate cloud for AI innovators. Nebius provides AI infrastructure you can count on, combining reliability and speed with flexibility and engineering support unmatched by hyperscalers. AI leaders like Meta, Shopify, and Higgsfield already partner with Nebius to run their AI workloads. Plus, venture-backed startups can save up to $150K on compute costs when they apply for access. Visit Nebius.com or Nebius.com/startup to learn more. And use code GRACE. You may get a surprise discount. You heard it here. Okay, so I want to start with like your journey. So like you were director of product at Amplitude, and then so before that you co-founded a company, and it got acquired by Amplitude, and then now you are an investor in a bunch of companies. You co-founded your own new company called Clarify. Clarify is a AI automated like CRM, so it can help you like basically it's like do all the back end from like a sales journey, and you guys are able to kind of like sense the soft side of sales as well, like so people's sentiment from like all the conversations. Maybe we could start with like what were some core lessons that you learned early on in your career in the first few companies. I don't think that was the first company you found. You also founded a company called Train Herald.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, tell us more, basically.
Yeah, Train Herald was very different. I was like right out of college. I knew nothing. I was basically an infant when it came to building companies, but did a startup with a couple of my teammates. We played football together. That was really kind of trying to address some of the needs that we had as players. I raised a little bit of capital. I was the CTO, was never qualified to be a CTO, as my co-founder reminds me all the time. Worked with him actually at his company afterwards for about 3.5 years before joining Atlassian. At Atlassian, had an opportunity to work with some amazing people on the growth team there, and then led design for Jira software for a few years. Then started a company called Iteratively back in 2019. That company, we spent about 6 months doing discovery and ended up building a customer data platform, effectively solving a lot of the symptoms in the go-to-market tech stack, kind of like layer on top of a bunch of different tools to sync data back and forth between your marketing automation platform and your CRM and your data warehouse. That company got acquired by Amplitude in 2021. Throughout that entire journey, realized that we were building the wrong solution, but we're kind of knee deep in it. After 3 years at Amplitude, decided to go solve the real root cause of the problem, which is now Clarify, which we're building a unified customer platform for all your customer data. We call it a CRM, but that's really kind of the first line of business tool that we're bringing to market. But essentially, we're building a product not just for your sales team, but for marketing, success, and support long term as well.
I love that. By the way, hi, a shout out to our amazing audience. Jerome, you have been coming since a few days ago, so just want to say hi. So I wanted to actually we had another like person's company got acquired by Amplitude, I believe, last week at my dinner.
Nice.
So what was the strategy for being acquired? Is that like for
We
example,
we weren't looking to be acquired. I actually think the best advice you'll get is from YC, which is don't go trying to be acquired. Just build your company, and if you eventually paths cross and it makes sense from a strategy perspective. So about 80% of our customers were Amplitude customers, and we're solving some of the most acute pain points that Amplitude had at the time, which is around data quality and speed of instrumentation. So it was kind of a strategic acquisition by them to help kind of shore up some of that. And they also wanted to bring a CDP to market, which is what we were working on. So then I ended up kind of leading a lot of the CDP efforts there. But yeah, I'd say the role of advice is don't go looking to be acquired. Build a great business that your customers love, and eventually if that's the exit path that you're looking for, great. I think the big difference with this startup is we're not looking to be acquired, right? This is a startup that we want to build to last. We want this to be a generational company. And that is partially why we decided to build not just the agentic layer on top, right? But actually the core system of record for teams as well. If you think about kind of where things are headed in the world, right? You have the foundational model companies that are gobbling up everything in between, and then you have the core systems of record. And so it was very clear for us from the beginning that we wanted to be the system of record as well as kind of this agentic system of action on top of that data.
Do you want to do a demo?
Yeah, I'm happy to give a demo.
Let's do it. I'm on your website right now, but I think your demo will be a lot more helpful.
Yeah. Let me close out some of these things real quick and share my screen.
I always have a hard hack to like share screen because you never know what's in the background.
Yeah. No, it's mostly safe.
It's like company like proprietary data sitting right there. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I mean, you'll see a few things here in particular that we'll talk about. This is effectively our desktop application, right? This is connected into a variety of different tools that teams use. But first and foremost is we're connected into your Google or Microsoft account. This gives us access to read all your emails and your meetings. From there, we auto-populate kind of a list of people and companies, kind of your core CRM records. You never have to really create anything because we're kind of ambiently looking at all the data and communication that you have with your customers. We also connect into Slack as well, which is another core channel for data for us. And we have a variety of other connectors to bring data in as well. So you can see that we have integrations with tools like Linear, Notion, Granola, and other MCPs. So it makes it really easy for you and or us to integrate with the broader ecosystem here. From there, we're really designing the experience for the end user, right? So if you're an individual rep or founder who's used a CRM before, you know that it's not really an easy to use experience, it's really cumbersome. So we try to optimize most of the day for helping you prepare and get context as quickly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can see for this particular calendar invite that we have, Grace, you can see I get kind of an AI-generated briefing.
Oh God. Oh God.
It's pre-generated for me. Founder and CEO of Smart Venture Meeting, host of 2 VC podcasts. You can see key context. This was booked well in advance. Grace's audience skews towards founders, investors, and tech operators. Her format is conversational, LinkedIn Live. So I don't have to go do a bunch of research. It's effectively brought to me in my CRM. You can see that I have a bunch of other meetings as well throughout the day. It kind of just helps me prep. And you can see that there is like briefings for a lot of these meetings that are generated. And similarly, I have all my calls recorded, right? So if I go back into previous conversations, you'll see that there's calls from yesterday that are all automatically recorded for me as well. Makes it really easy for my CRM effectively be the system of record or source of truth for me.
I have so many questions there. So it's like, I mean, even for my meeting notes, like I rarely ever look at like every meeting notes. I mean, I probably just gonna like, if so and so is asking me for like a detail or something, I may just like, summarize or whatever, and then like do a quick follow up. But
Yeah.
I think I like that there's like a new chat button there as well. So my curiosity is like one of the core thing about sales is like I think you guys so I was like listening to a bunch of stuff that you guys have done before. I think one of the things is like the on the social perspective. So like maybe let's say you and I went to like a coffee shop and then like, it's very hard for me to like record the whole conversation. How do I kind of funnel that information and then the sentiment to into the sales funnel? And then the other part is like I think as a founder, it's like it's really hard for me. Like I feel like I treat the person who is spending $5 to like 50K like the same to a degree, right? Like I mean, you should treat everybody with the same sentiment, but like you probably have to prioritize based on the business needs, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
if you're so just curious on like a lot of times like and then also like sometimes it's like you may have a customer that like their enterprise value is really really small, but like they're like a long time customer or like they're like LTV is like longer or whatever. Like, how do you think about the prioritization on like who to sell first and then who to sell? I want to say last, but also another part is like about being like selling to people is like I think like it's hard to read based on people's personality. Obviously, the more you get along with someone, the more likely you guys will be a better business relationship in general. But on the other hand, like, you could really, really like someone, but you got zero business from them. So how do you kind of balance I like you, but like, this will like never go anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll probably mention is like selling is human, right? There's a really good book, which I had to get over my fear coming from more of a product management design background of learning how to sell. And a lot of it for me is there's a very thin line between a great salesperson and somebody who's really good at discovery. right? So for me as a PM, like my superpower was I was more of an outbound PM, right? So it was like learning about customers, helping do more of the solution architecture work with them, helping them get successful on whatever area I was working on at the time. And so for me, when I think about some of your questions, it's like, yes, selling is potentially hard for a lot of people who are just getting used to it, but it is human. It's like we've been doing this for millennia essentially. And when we think about your audience, there's going to be people that you just love hanging out with and you love working with, and you might not ever get a ton of intrinsic value from that from a monetary perspective. But one of the things that I'll be remiss to say even about Clarify is because we're a PLG CRM, we have hundreds of paid customers now. We have thousands of users, what we call users, people who are using our product that aren't paying us. And these people talk about our product, right? So even though we're not extracting monetary value from them, they're helping increase things like word of mouth and distribution. And today, word of mouth is our number one growth lever for our business, right? So we, I think we're one of the only few CRMs that I put in this like new gen or next gen AI native category that has a freemium offering. We also don't charge based off seats, so your entire team can use it. We just charge for the AI. So we're trying to be more value aligned, and we understand that like, hey, we want people at the earliest stages of company building to have something that's better than a spreadsheet that they can use, that they get a lot of value from, and hopefully we can grow with them over time. So, and then as far as our sales motion, right? Like we have sellers on our team now, and like it's their job to help segment the people that are coming into our funnel, which is 100% inbound today. And be able to know who they should be meeting with and where they should be spending their time. And that's part of being a seller. I mean, we have capabilities built into Clarify today, right? Like I can go look at all of my product signups, right, and start segmenting these audiences. I can go build things like ICP definitions here, right? So I can go define an ICP definition of what my ICP looks like and have this automatically filled out from AI with things like internet research. So this is super helpful, but it does require you to go and define your ICP and then have the system qualify it and then route it to the right person, depending on whether or not it's a good fit. But this is all, I'd say standard CRM basics.
Quick question. So is this like already people in your ecosystem that you were kind of like funneling all your contacts and then kind of like it generate the potential leads for you, or can it like kind of outbound for you?
Yeah, so we have both. So when you think about Clarify today, it's the goal for us is to source, send, and sell. So we're building a unified platform. So you can see things over here like the lead finder, right? This is the ability to go in and define an audience from Clarify, right? So we have a giant list of people and companies. So from here, you can go in, use AI to filter this down to your ICP, right? So I can go do something like, go look at my closed won deals, build me an ICP definition. Usually I would just use Whisperflow for this. Definition, USP, and find me leads from the TAMDB. All right, so this is effectively using AI to then go look at this list of people. And generally the way that I do this is I'm pretty embedded. I tend to not actually click around anymore. Like I think most UI is going to be generative in the future. And so for us, right, like I tend to actually operate more within this kind of rep experience where it can go do things for me. So we have Rep, which is our agent, and you can see that I use this quite a bit as an example. So I'll look at one that I've already done here. Find one with a customer here. Yeah, here's one. So if I did something like look at Wrangle and their website, it generates the USP, does the ICP definition, finds me a bunch of leads, then actually creates me a list of people that kind of fit within that ICP definition. And then from there, I can go in and generate a campaign, right? That's specific built for them.
So how much is so does it does it help you generate like LinkedIn and email as well?
Yeah, so let me show you what this preview looks like real quick. On the campaign side, I might have deleted this one. But yeah, we have campaigns built in as well, right? So you can go in and generate a campaign. And so this campaign effectively allows you to personalize to a particular list of people. Right here, you can see this is Seattle founders in the Madrona portfolio, and you can see that this is all personalized to them for a dinner that we're potentially hosting, right? So, and I can go in and preview this, right? So somebody like David from Read AI, you can see that this is personalized to them. So,
With a former guest too.
oh yeah, it was great. And yeah, you can see for this one in particular, I was testing some of our AI generation capabilities to speak like a pirate.
Speaking of
Yeah.
I have so many questions. One is like I feel like in this space is fairly competitive, even for myself. I'm an angel investor in 3 of these companies. 2 are YC, and 1 is built by like I would say like a GTM influencer. And I feel like in this space, is all the tools have like so much similarity. Obviously, I think the very famous one would be like Clay. Everyone's like using some sort of I think like all the startup have like their own kind of like version of Clay, because Clay is kind of expensive. So like I don't know, like the time that I tried, it was like it would suggest me for like a $800 per month integration, which I feel like it's like very hard for tools. And like I guess like when you're thinking about like, so yeah, okay, so please show us this. And then for the token and the credit, like how do you make sure the token is like kind of low? Because I feel like for this kind of stuff, I'm for the tools I'm using today, it's like you are just essentially paying $20 every day. Like after you started using it, even you're like paying like a monthly subscription, but there's like also the tokens are using more and more if you're like trying to do search. And then there's also a lot of like unqualified leads. Like so for example, I like when you're searching 100 data, like, so it can give you like the same company name, but like there's like 3 companies in New York and then 1 company in the Bay Area, and like it's completely like you only need one of those, which is like the correct one, and then like it generate you like wasted leads that like you don't really know until like you really go through the leads to clean it up. Yeah, like tell us more about like the whole like
it's a great question. So I think the way that we think about Clarify is that we're giving away the CRM for free, right? So that like if you think about people vibe coding their CRM, which is a hot topic, and there's just an article about this in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, right? Like CRUD applications don't provide a ton of value, right? And I think the issue is that most people think of their CRM as a CRUD application, right? You can create, read, update, delete records, and there's customer relationship fields, but like all those things are fairly commoditized. So like when we think about the value that we're providing for our customers, it's really the AI. Right? These are things that maybe they could use something like Cloud Code or go use kind of an agent builder to go do some of that work. But again, do they want to be responsible for hosting this, managing the infrastructure, managing key access? Using this within a team context is much harder than using this within a solo P or founder context as well. And so we really just focus on what are the things that are driving value for our customers, and like for us, like a normalized cost of credit usage, right? So like you start at free, and then it's $20 for every 5,000 credits that you use. So you can see for this month, this is our own instance, we used 100 K credits, right? So this is relatively cheap, even for somebody like us. This would not cost me that much money.
How is it? I have a question on this. So like for the leads that you're generating, like is that from like a proprietary data like source? So for example, is that like, do you guys have to pay for like, PitchBook or like, CBS or whatever, like, or where does the kind of like email come from?
So we buy a bunch of third-party data and then we normalize it. So similar to if you use Clay and you set up your own data enrichment waterfall, that's all just provided out of the box for Clarify. So we broker, we have a bunch of different data brokers that we work with. We then normalize the data, combine it, and then we enrich it as well. So we use AI to clean up a bunch of stuff, add more context to it. And then that's what we provide to our customers, is this kind of clean universal data set. So instead of them having to go to Clay and configure something, that's just all provided kind of out of the box in the CRM.
Speaking of data broker, oh, by the way, hi, King Property Dealer, I guess. So I guess I wonder when you're thinking about like broking dinner, how do you think about I guess like where do you guys find the broker, and then how does the industry work? Is that similar to like the real estate industry, and then like or like a insurance industry of like each broker is like finding the lead database
Yeah, so I mean, each
Or
competitor of ours is going to use different data brokers, right? And we're probably all using, relatively speaking, similar ones at this point. So for us, it's like, we know which ones provide better data. We've done a lot of research and experimentation to figure out what brokers provide fresher, more up-to-date data, more accurate data. And then we built a lot of like normalization on our back end to like be able to stitch together across all these different data providers. Most of these are provided either as a flat file or as an API, and we know which ones to use the flat file. We know which ones to use the API on demand as well. So yeah, there's a bit of magic, I'd say, in the work that we've done to make it so that our data is just high quality.
I guess like another question I had was like you mentioned about like the AI is like what
Mhm.
differentiate the platform. Can you elaborate on like, I feel like there's a lot of like sales ecosystem or like
Mhm.
players, um, whether it's on our podcast or like just like people are, um, yeah, you can leave that thing.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I don't know like how to, oh no, oh no. Wait, sorry. My bad.
What's the wrong
I feel like I gave the wrong instruction. It should be like me deleting this from my screen, I guess. I have a question on like so when you're thinking about like, the sales CRM like set of AI, like which part do you feel like have it's like designed differently than, like a Clay or any other basically company in the CRM slash like sales space?
I mean, yeah, Clay's not a CRM, right? They're a data enrichment provider. They're a data orchestration tool. They're moving into a lot of the outreach. So I'd say the sourcing and sending side, and eventually probably gonna be in the sales side as well, would be my guess.
Mhm,
And then if you think about the way that we think about our platform is that we're combining both first party and third party data, right? So we focus a lot on stitching together things like your email meeting data with third party data, and then using things like internet research on top of that,
mhm,
as well as just like AI enrichment from our own sources,
mhm,
so that you have a good quality experience, right? The thing that I would highlight more is just like what are the design principles or product principles that we have for how we build, which is it should just work out of the box. Like you shouldn't have to configure anything, right? Like you just set up and you're up and running within 5 minutes. And like we're spending a lot of time to make sure that that's the case. I think a lot of our competitors in market still require forward deployed go-to-market teams or however you want to call them to get you up and running and train the AI.
mhm.
Like we're trying to do something that just works. And that, I'd say probably 10 times harder than if we were just a handful of people today.
Mm. When you are sending these code DMs, another question about like generating the DM, like is there any thing different that like, you mentioned about like, you can change the tone like a parrot or something. But I feel like most of the CRM like or like most of the sales tool are not generating exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
It is always somewhat tailored to the person, but I feel like this is getting a little bit tricky as like if there's like I think one is like not sounding like AI because sometimes like as a founder I also get like a bunch of people trying to sell me stuff and they're like I read it is very tailored. It like mentions my middle school but but literally I feel like it's kind of like giving like it's like a fake
There's two things.
um
There's one is knowing about the person. There's knowing about your USPs, universal selling propositions, right? And like, does
Mhm,
this person fit your ICP? So there's like what you can find offline, and then there's like tailoring the voice and tone to the individual, right? So like in memory, what we'd call memory here, but like we train our AI based off your voice, right? So we look at all the
mhm,
emails that you sent. We look at what's worked, right? We can look at like things like closed won deals and see like what was the customer, what was the buyer journey
mhm,
that transaction, and be able to like figure out how to use that data to inform the campaigns that we
mhm,
create for you, right? So this is something that's a little bit more, if you're not the CRM, you're pretty much disconnected from this data source, like you don't understand this context. And so for everything for AI, right, context is king. And we provide that context to our model, both things like voice and tone, the ideal buyer journey, as well as things like USPs. So we have all the unstructured data to pull out literally verbiage from what your best customers are saying as well.
I can you like walk us through how you're designing the system? So like do you design the CRM first and then or do you design like, the recording side first or like do you design like, the infrastructure first? Like how did it all came together as like
we were the first CRM that had an integrated call recorder, right? Because we knew that we wanted that data and we wanted to be able to combine what, traditionally a company would have to go buy something like Salesforce and Gong, and we wanted that all in one, because we knew that the best data set available for AI as we were building agents was the unstructured data, both things like email as well as the call recording data. And so that was priority number one for us, was to build things like pipeline management as well as the integrated call recording, what would be traditionally called things like customer intelligence. And that's what we shipped just right out of the gate. And then from there, it was like, how do we kind of perfect that core system of record? So we added a bunch of capabilities, support for things like custom objects, relationship fields, integrations with third-party tools. And then now, since then, we've been building kind of around this hub and spoke. So if you think about the hub being CRM, system of record, we've been trying to build out all the different capabilities that an early stage go-to-market team would need, including the sourcing and sending side, which is kind of a bit newer on our end.
I wonder, so like maybe if you could talk about like, the journey of like from being a designer to kind of like joining the founder journey, because I think like I feel like this is like very interesting, because I feel like designing any kind of like product is a very unique skill, because I think it takes a lot of listening, and then also like, really be ruthless about like which part to not do. And obviously some of the greatest founders are designers, like the Brian Chesky of the world, like the founder of Airbnb. And can you chat about like, how do you kind of like shape using the design thinking skill
I think,
to be transition into like director of product / like, CEO and stuff like that?
yeah, I mean, for me, like we used to have this joke at Atlassian that every PM was just a failed designer, which, product management and design is a very high overlap in my mind. So I've flip-flopped between each role at the different companies. So at EMC, I was a product manager, but I still did a bit of design. And then I joined back at Atlassian, I went back onto the design track. And but it was funny because I was actually interviewing originally at Atlassian as a product management role. So I think there's a ton of similarities. I actually think the people that have great product sense and intuition, right, whether or not you want to call that product strategy, but have the ability to go talk to customers, understand what problems they have, end up having the creativity to come up with the right solution, validate that solution with customers, are immensely valuable in today's world. As you think about building, effectively the cost of building going to zero with AI, design skills and product craft are way more valuable today. Because, for us, like I'd rather hire somebody that has those skills that we can enable with better AI harnesses to actually go build and deliver things. So even when it comes to building today at Clarify, like we're not building, product briefs and PRDs and then going to design and building things in Figma. Like, we have people that are directly just going to code and prototyping as quick as they can. It's the easier and better to go do that today, the last like couple of months, than it is to traditionally think about these roles as very isolated. For me, my background and the things that I got joy from were always not the thing that I was working on in Figma or in Confluence if it was a product brief. It was talking to customers, making sure that we're solving the right problem, validating that, and then coming up with a solution that was delightful for them, that solved their problem in a way that elicited an emotional reaction. And so when I think about the software that we're building at Clarify, like the thing that I absolutely love is the reaction that customers have when they use the product. We have so many people that love our product, and we get so much customer love from it. And because we put a lot of care and detail into design and making sure that the overall experience is great.
Can we chat about also I want to talk about like your investing journey. I know this is like we went on a really hard pivot during this conversation, but you have invested in Warp. I can't pronounce their name, but like, and then also a lot of like really great companies. But I mean, I was like just like researching them like yesterday, and but like I'm just curious about like when you're investing in these companies, like I'm sure as a second-time founder, you are having a lot of like access to like a lot of these like founders in the network. And what's your kind of investment criteria? And
I mean, for me, so I'll tell you why I do startup investing. For me, it was mostly I just wanted to pay it forward, right? So like I had a lot of people help us on our journey at Iteratively, a lot of former founders or founders at the time that were giving me advice that I could lean on when I had challenging issues. And, after we sold to Amplitude, I think I started, it's like within a month, I started writing angel checks. And, I ended up raising a small kind of emerging manager, $10 million venture fund as well, and thought about going down the VC path. I like building software too much. And a lot of this was just to pay it forward, right? I had a lot of people helped us. I want to help other people. I wanted to pay it forward. And that's even today. Like I jump on calls with early founders all the time to talk about things like fundraising or early hiring or solving co-founder drama. And it's something that like when I ran into these issues, I had people that I can lean on, and I definitely want to pay it forward. So for me, it's not really about the economic value. It's more of just being able to show somebody that, yes, I care enough about you that I'm willing to write you a check and that I'm here for you if you ever need anything.
I wonder, so like, how do you kind of like, I guess like there's like two questions. One is like when you started like second time like founding a company, I think like peaking the space of like this like sales like CRM. You mentioned that you guys are like the first kind of like integrated with the meeting notes and everything. But I think like nowadays like I feel like the CRM space is like super crowded. Like in the long term wise, like strategically, like what do you feel like would be the differentiation? Like in the like what are things that you would double down on basically?
There's three of us in this space 2 years ago, right? And now there's a dozen plus. There's been 400 million in venture capital poured into this category in the last year, right? So, I think if you look at VCs, everything's happened cyclically. I think a lot of VCs now want to invest in core systems of record, whether or not it's ERP, CRM, ITSM, you name it. And so we go through these cycles where, I think everything kind of in the middle between, again, foundational model company and core system of record is going to be squeezed as the foundational model companies kind of move up into the stack. So, I think we timed the market well. You can't really time it in a sense. Like I think we got lucky. And when we decided to start this company, we started it 6 months earlier. We would have been rebuilding a lot of things and having to rethink kind of the core workflows. We started it 6 months later. I think we'd be playing a lot of catch up. The one thing I think about core differentiation is like there's strategy and then there's execution, right? So I think a lot of people have the same strategy at the moment. Now it's the question of how do you win? And that's really kind of an execution game. And most venture deals are really an execution risk, right? You're trying to de-risk things like, am I investing in the right founder? Do they have the right strategy? But really it's execution. So for us, like we just redid our company values. We try to move uncomfortably fast. Like everything we do, we try to do it faster than anybody else. And we try to raise the bar. We try to focus a lot on quality. And those things can tend to be at odds with folks. But yeah, if we're going to do it, we're going to nail it. And we're going to do it quickly so we can learn as fast as we can from customers.
I think in this space, I think like prioritization really, really is like very important because like for each CRM system, like I literally like even like in the 3 companies that I have invested in, like I feel like they're like adjacently alike, and then both like I feel like somewhat it's like there's just two things, right? One is like the ChatGPT function of like you tell me your ICP and then I like help you just scrape like the internet and find like 25 downloads, and then or like I gave you like, hey, here's like 45 names, like go find their contact or whatever. But in terms of like integrating into the conversations, it's like I think like so far by far like all the CRM I have personally tried are like partial function of something that I'm like building continuously. And I guess like which part would you say is like the core advantage that you want to win for?
You have to, this is the thing you have to have, if you're going to, so this is the theory, this is like the Parker Conrad theory, compound startup. I think a lot of people are kind of playing this game right now, right? Which is, hey, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm going to do all the things that attention's related to it. And this was kind of core to our thesis about 2 years ago, and enjoyed listening to a lot of the conversations Parker had about how he kind of address this with the HRIS record for Rippling. So definitely not unique. I think, knowing a lot of the competitors that we're competing with now, I think they had a very similar thesis. the thing that you have to realize is that you have to have a really great anchor product, right? If you don't have a great anchor product, it's really hard for you to move on to the next thing or then go add more and more and more and more. And so like for us, the core anchor product really is the CRM, which is why we're investing a ton more into making our CRM best in class, right? Best in the market. And then we have all these tangential things that we can be, 80-20 good on, right? I don't think we have to be the best outreach style experience out there. If we have a great CRM and we have the data to actually help influence the leads that you're reaching out to. Now, call recording is a fairly commoditized feature these days, right? It's relatively easy to go implement into your product. Lead enrichment, fairly easy to go implement into your product. And there's a ton of pick and shovels companies that just make that really easy to integrate. And, all of our competitors are fairly using the same thing. So it's, you have to have great customer experience. You have to have a great extensible platform, especially in this age of AI. So we're investing in things like our API and our CLI and SDK. We're investing in things like MCP, and us not just being an MCP server, but being an MCP client that can connect to other MCP servers, right? So you have to have a great CRM, but then you also have to like coexist within this like market, and then you have to be strategic about like where do you place your bets as far as the other areas that you want to start going out specifically after.
I have so like one is like what do you think was the most like strategic decision that you have made since you since you started running this company?
I think the decision that was non-obvious at the time that we made was going after like integrating our call recorder. That was one that was non-obvious 2 years ago. And I think in hindsight hindsight's always 2020, obvious now, but was non-obvious at the time. The second non-obvious decision that we made is that we kind of structured the team into pods, right? So we allowed us to parallelize a lot of things quickly, and that's more on just like company organization, but like part of this job is like how do you like align teams and get work done? And so we moved from like one core engineering team, multiple engineering teams, and hired a lot more product engineers to run quickly. Now, I think there's pros and cons of that approach, especially kind of where we are right now with AI. But I think that was another non-obvious decision, which is to quickly move into like kind of a pod structure, which would allow us to tackle more ambitious problems quickly.
How do you spend the money? Like, do you spend more of the founding into hiring engineers or like hiring product designer or GTM?
We spend nothing on go-to-market at the moment. And
Okay, so I literally feel like so as a founder or as a person chatting with like every single person, people are focusing so much on the product, but I feel like nowadays it's like you have to focus on distribution.
Yeah.
It's literally like, I feel like, this is just my personal opinion.
Yeah,
But
it's not a wrong opinion, right? So if you think about cost of building product is going down, right? The difference between building a C product and a B product and an A product is still immensely challenging, right? To build an A+ product, right? Like let's put it in the category of like companies like Notion and Linear still requires a lot more taste and craft than what most teams are actually capable of building. And so like I'd say like that is still relatively challenging today. And secondly, so when I think about like my priorities as a CEO, like what do I care about? One is like freaking clear product market fit, like best product in market, number one, first and foremost. And so like I obsess about that. Number two is unfair advantage in distribution, right? Which is tangentially related to go to market. Number three is like, are we hiring the right people for this team, right? Because this is a 10, 15-year journey. And at the end of the day, like the best asset you have as a company is the people that you're investing into.
I fear now it's not like a 10 to 15-year-old journey because like nowadays, like, you've seen like Apple just acquire the fitness app.
Yeah.
But no, about like 18 years old that like it's purely vibe coded. So like I feel like I don't know. I'm not talking about like acquisition. I'm talking about like I feel like for IPOs, like because of like the AI era, like everyone's like racing mega rounds and like very fastly.
Well, there's the question of path to revenue, but path to market. When I say 10 to 15-year journey, I'm more thinking about like return to investors and like it's the question of like what's the goal of the founder? Does the founder want to get acquired by Apple, or does the founder want to have a quick a quick path. Like, no, like I'm building a company that I want to work for the rest of my life, right? And that's the way that I think about it, which is, so the decisions that I make are like, hey, how is the company culture? Are we going to be built to last? Are we hiring the right people? Do we have the right values? And this is, there's, yes, building a product and getting the revenue and then scaling that quickly. But if you're miserable doing it and the team's miserable doing it, it's like, okay, well, that's not great either. I think that's a lot of the toxic culture that we have right now, specifically around 996 and everything else. So there's everything in balance, right? The earlier question that you were making around spending money in go-to-market, we have a competitor that bought a billboard on the 5 freeway here. And I was like, you don't have a product in market. I feel like there's people doing those things because, we're getting back into, cash seems a little bit more free now. We're not quite ZERP years, but people are raising lots of cash and spending cash quickly. I don't necessarily think that that's great for the market or returns for LPs. And right, having kind of straddled both lines, both being investing as well as joining as an LP at a bunch of different funds and doing this, it's like I still think that operating not in a cash efficient manner is the right strategy, but operating with good core principles of how to manage the responsibility that you have as a founder of raising venture capital still matters, right? So for me, it's like I want to invest in product. I want to invest in making sure we have the best product in market. I want to invest in ways that our product can grow itself. And again, like I come from Atlassian, and a lot of our team come from Atlassian, where the product was the core flywheel of success there. Now, for us to be successful in this market, I think we can't just be great at product. We have to be great at product and marketing and sales, and we have to have kind of the trifecta there. But product comes first.
What's your thought on like, what would you say was like the biggest like market shift since like you started this thing?
I mean, Claude Code and specifically the 4.5 model was amazing, right? Like things that were formerly impossible are now possible, and 4.6 has gotten better. And if you think about, and if you can kind of if you can chart the path forward 6 months from now, like the world that we're going to live in is going to be very different 6 months from now with what's possible. And a lot of this now is, having conversations internally with different folks around how do you build, like how is the SDLC changing? Like, how do you think about parallelizing a lot of work, right? Where every engineer is now a manager and you're like operating a factory, and your job is not to actually write code, but your job is to actually instruct agents to write code. I think that's the biggest change, honestly, that we've had. And that's, not just for us, but every other startup out there. And so there's, you as a team have to either embrace this or die. And so there's only 2 options, right? Like only 2 options. You're dead or you're going to embrace this. And so then a lot of that is just like getting the team excited about this new modality, right? This new modus operandi, right? This way of working that they're traditionally not used to, right? And so you end up having folks that are very much in like the early majority who are embracing this, and you have folks that are, I'd say like a little bit lagging in the sense that they might be great engineers or great designers or great PMs, but they're just not necessarily thinking about like, hey, how is this going to work 6 months from now, and how do I embrace this now so that I have the right skills to be successful? And so I think there's going to be a giant amount of retraining, not just in tech, but in all functions over the next few years that are required for the economy to be successful and sustainable.
Another question is like, what are some stuff that like it's different than your original prediction? So for example, like before you enter the CRM game, like what are some stuff that you feel like you were thinking, but like the prediction was like completely out of like your original?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I didn't want to go work on was the outreach capability, right? I didn't want to go work on building yet another spam cannon. And today we haven't done that. We throttle, we make sure that we measure all the emails that go out so that they're actually performant. And so we have better attribution and understanding of like, hey, like we're not just trying to blast out tens of thousands of emails for each particular customer. It's not, we don't want this to be a volumes game, because that just hurts everybody. And what you've seen is that this whole AI SDR BDR category kind of exploded in the last like 2 years, but it doesn't really help anybody because more noise means less signal, which means it's harder to get attention. And then you move, having spent a lot of time in growth, then you move on to the next channel or the next tactic, and then that becomes saturated and you move on to the next thing. So like that was one thing I think that I didn't necessarily want to build, but our customers have asked us for, primarily when it comes to omni-channel messaging and orchestration. And I think the thing that I probably didn't intuit was the cost of, like, workflows is a great example. Like workflows and integrations, the cost of writing workflows and integrations, like humans aren't going to be managing these things anymore, right? Like you're going to have AI that are owning this and understanding, like, hey, is this thing actually working? And so generally, if you think about CRM, you have this like core data layer, you have a workflow layer, and integrations layer. And having spent a lot of time in CDP, integrations take a lot of time to manage and maintain. I think that is completely different. We're building skills to we're effectively building skills to build integrations. And the goal is that you can spin up integrations on demand. You can build a workflow via code, right? Like AI is really good at writing these things. So yeah, I think that has changed my mental model of how we build even internally. And then what do we expose to customers, and what controls do we give customers to go kind of build on top of our own platform?
For sure. What would you say is like some challenges that you have not seen from your first company?
Some challenges I have not seen from it was the first company. We're in a relatively small market, right? So like the TAM was smaller, so it was not as competitive, right? Like, and even CDPs, you can say CDPs were a competitive space, but like the leading CDP at the time sold to Twilio had like 103 million in revenue, right? When it's right for 3.5 billion, right? So it was like the category itself wasn't that large. Versus you think about CRM, right? Like across all the incumbents, like it's much larger, right? So which again, I was a Division 1 athlete, right? Like you want to rise to the challenge of your competition. You want to play with the best people in the arena so that you get better, right? So like I'd say that is something that we kind of knew going into it. But yeah, we're playing against great competition. Like we have very good competitors. We have folks that have been in the space, understand the market really well. Whereas previously, I would say like I didn't necessarily feel that pressure in our last startup. Yeah, like this is Division 1. We're playing amongst the best competitors out there.
I think how do you view competition? Do you feel like it's like, oh, my competitor's like doing this feature, I mean, should we implement this feature? How do you kind of like think?
Yeah, I mean, so I hate using sports analogies, but I already just went there, so I'll use another one. Like you have to kind of play your own game, right? At the end of the day, like you want to study the competition, you understand like what their playbook looks like, you want to understand like what are the things that tactically you're going to do to play offense or defense. But like at the end of the day, like the thing that matters is like, do you show up? Are you the first one on the field and the last one off the field? And I think this is interesting. Is my thesis over my career is I'm always going to be the hardest working person, right? So I'm going to be the first one in the office, last one to leave. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to effectively just grind it out, right? And I still think that works today. It's a little bit harder, in the context of AI, because everyone has these superpowers now, so it's relatively easy to build. But again, it goes back into like, can you build A+ software? Do you have taste? And I still think that's relatively a core advantage that we have as a team. Now, again, we want to play our own game. There's a lot of competitors out there. There's a lot of competitors that look at what we do and implement similar things. So it's you just have to out execute. You have to out hustle, and I think that's the thing that's going to effectively help companies that are in the arena with a lot of competition win.
When you're thinking about taste, like what does that kind of like mean for you? So obviously I feel like taste meaning like, some sort of like intrinsic experience or like some sort of like intuition on like, oh, we should go this direction on the product. I think like right now, like yes, I think taste is like very important, but in the world of AI, I feel like I think it's easy, but also hard to change the taste. Like maybe I'll like let you take the floor on like, what are something that you feel like is tasteful that in Clarify versus like what is not tasteful in like a traditional.
So I spent 4 years at Atlassian. I have a ton of respect for that company. You look at, I was, leading design for Jira software for 2 years based in Sydney. And you look at the product experience that we created for Jira, and you look at the product experience that Linear has created, and they're vastly different. right? And I would say that's taste. That's having an opinionated opinion about how software development should be built and building a product that specifically matches your opinions as a founder or as a team. And so I think that is a great representation of what taste matters. To be said, Jira has a great business, multiple billions a year in revenue, and a great company, honestly. But if you look at Linear, it's a much more tasteful product. And again, this is no dig on Jira or on Atlassian as a company. I have a lot of friends that still work there and work their ass off. Now, secondly, when I think about Clarify, like there's things that we care a lot about, which is the user experience. We care a lot about performance. We care a lot about how we roll features out, how we think about working with customers as early adopters and like getting the product perfected before we generally GA it. I would say that's not necessarily universally held or true within the market. I think people just ship a lot more slop these days, and it's easy to ship slop, but it's really hard to have good taste. And yes, you want to move with urgency, and yes, you want to do these things, but like once you ship something, the customers can see one thing. They can see the pace of innovation at which you're moving, and they can see the quality of the work and the quality of the craftsmanship at which they're using the product. And so we want to have both a high degree of velocity, but we also want to have a high degree of craftsmanship in the work that we do.
What's your journey on like managing your current team? So like, you mentioned about like a lot of the team members are like focusing on the product, and how did you kind of like ensemble the team together?
I mean, a lot of the people we worked with before, right? So most of the core team from back in Iteratively days, and even the team that we hired at Amplitude is here at Clarify. So we've hired a lot of people that we've worked with, we trust implicitly, like they're great engineers. And so it was just, it's relatively easy to scale up the team from that perspective. A lot of people from Atlassian that I worked with as well here on the team. And so like it helps create more of a shared DNA and kind of a culture essentially, because you've already gone through a lot of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So you can move a little bit quicker. Now it's like we're starting to expand out the team. We're 23 people. We have like 4 people joining us next week. We have our plan is to be closer to the 40-ish range by the end of the year. It's like hiring people that we haven't worked with, right? And there's hard degree of pros and cons with that, right? There's definitely more risks. So it's a question of like, how do you interview? How do you hire? How do you onboard and ramp people quickly? And so I wouldn't say we have everything figured out there. I think there's definitely some mistakes that we've made on the hiring side. But I think that's just part of life and building a company and kind of learning on the fly.
You mentioned about mistake on the hiring side. Like, what would you say was a mistake?
Yeah, I think one thing we hired a great engineer, and there's always this question of motivation versus inspiration, right? So we hired a great engineer, but he wasn't really motivated. He wasn't mission driven in the sense of like what he was working on. And I think that was one lesson learned that I had, which is like, do people care about the problem that they're working on? I think people get motivation for a variety of different ways. They might like writing code, right? They like the craft, right? Which is definitely changing. I think motivation for an engineer needs to change a bit as well, from solving the problem to, again, managing the AI that's solving that problem, instructing it. And then, so we hired this person. They weren't necessarily excited about the problem space that we're working in. And, I think as an outcome of that, they weren't doing their best work, right? And they weren't excited about showing up every day to do their best work, right? So within 6 months, like they made the decision that this wasn't the right place for them. And I think part of that, for me moving forward is like, how do you kind of avoid that, right? Like, how do you, as part of your hiring process, understand like, hey, is this the thing that they want to be spending their life's work on? If they were to, spend the next 5 years here and drop dead, is this 5 years well spent for them? Do they get a lot of joy out of the team that they work with, the way that we work and operate, the customers that we solve, or the customers that we service, the problems that they solve? And it's hard because, you're asking tough questions up front in the interview process, right? They might be like, no, I actually care about philanthropy, or I care, if I didn't have to work, what would you do? And the answer is not working on Clarify or working on this particular problem, or at least tangentially related to them doing their craft. And it's a hard sell for me at this point.
I think that's a really good point. And like, being able to sense out like, are they like a motivated person in general? But I feel like to recruit any person to join like a SaaS company is like, I think it's kind of slightly beyond mission driven, because like I think most people are like
Yeah.
generally happy about like working on a problem that's like complicated enough for them to like just like dedicate a lot of time on. But when it comes to it's like sales CRM, like in the space in general, it may be like tough for them to be continuously like seeing the work that they're doing. Or people want to basically, I think like in the past, like I feel like I've chatted with the founders that are building in I think it was like the founder of like Cruise, Daniel Kahn went on our show. So basically he was like his first company was doing something like I forgot, it was like doing some sort of like janitor or like cleaning a house or something, like something very traditional. And then their second car their second company is like a self-driving car. So like basically there's more engineer want to work on the self-driving car versus like the first very traditional problem. So I'm just curious on like motivating the
I think
employee.
the level of abstraction here is valuable, right? So like when I was at Atlassian, like I wasn't, oh, I'm working on a ticket management system. No, I'm helping, literally like what we used to say is like, I'm helping send people to the moon, right? Like, NASA was one of our big customers at the time, right? And they used Jira to manage all of the software that they built and all the internal operations, right? So there's this level of abstraction that you can have within a team, right? So like for me, regardless of what I do, and this like touches on the investment side as well, which is like I love helping founders, right? Like, yeah, I'm building a CRM to help them on the go-to-market side, but like I love working and helping founders. So like that's what motivates me. It's not that, oh, I'm building a CRM, because guess what? Like if I wasn't building a CRM, I'd be doing something that's tangentially related to helping founders be successful and build the next generation businesses. So like for me, it's like when you're joining an early stage startup, it's fucking hard, right? Like the work that you're going to be asked to do, the amount of time and commitment that you're going to be asked to put into it is fucking hard. Like honestly, the best advice I got, I was 22 years old, this was 15 years ago, was, oh, you want to make a lot of money? Go join Oracle, go join Cisco, go take a job. You're going to make $1 million a year in 15, 20 years. You're going to have 10 million plus and you can retire. No one wants to do that. To be clear, there's a lot of people at these companies, I'm sure, like some people want to do that, but like, at the end of the day, it's not about money. It's about like what problems are you solving in the world and who are you solving those problems with, and do you love the work that you do?
What's your tech stack look like right now?
Yeah, we're fully TypeScript, right? So everything, both front and back end. We have monorepo, it's React, TypeScript, Nest.js as well, Chassis and Tailwind on the front end. And the nice thing about this is the tech stack that AI is really, really good at writing as well. BullMQ for our task management system. We're a fully event-driven system as well, right? So use Kafka for managing and storing and routing all the events into the different systems that we use. So our architecture actually looks more like a CDP, generally speaking, as well.
What's your since like I mean we just chat about like your client profile, it's like a bunch of startups or like people that are at least like starting in the startup and venture space. What's your kind of like go to market roadmap onto like where are you thinking about like enterprise subscription from like bigger company? Why or why not?
I mean, we still have to earn the right to go up market. I like to say, right? Like there's, we have folks that will push up market, I'm sure, sooner than we will. But the reality is they're probably going to leave a lot of opportunity for SMB. And so, yeah, our market right now is SMB. We sell to early stage startups, primarily ICPs, like seed to Series B, companies doing 10 million plus a year in revenue as well. A lot of that is migrations from tools like Salesforce, Outreach, Gong, you name it. But again, like if there's one person with a napkin idea, I want to work with them as well, right? And I think this is the issue that you run into is, we have competitors who are raising their prices and they're going to leave a lot of opportunity down there. And we want to make sure that like we can get at the earliest stages of company building, work with these people and scale with them. So it's our job to like grow faster than the companies that we service are growing. And then, I mean, we have a lot of non-traditional, non-digital native businesses using us as well. We have different private equity, RIAs, real estate companies. Like this is we have manufacturing companies using us now as well. So yeah, it's not just digital native businesses, but those are the ones that, yeah, I think I know the closest to and have the strongest relationship and connection with.
For sure. I want to be mindful of time. Maybe we wrap with a quick 1 minute fire run.
Sounds good.
What's your favorite book?
Lord of the Rings.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Investors in this company is Gradient, Madrona, and US Venture Partners.
Oh no, who would you invite to your dinner?
Sorry, who would I invite to dinner?
You can only invite them as well. It's fine.
I mean, I do
Like it's
invite.
like a board meeting and they're asking
We
you.
have our post-board meeting dinners. No,
You're like, no, they're not invited. I'm just kidding.
they're definitely invited. Ray Dalio is somebody that I like. I read a lot of his content, and it'd be like if I had to talk to somebody about something just like life experience, that'd be one person that I want to talk to.
Wow. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
There's two people that I like to mention. One was this person named Sean Close, who is the VP of Growth at Atlassian. He's the current CPO at Confluent. I learned a ton from him just through osmosis and watching him operate. And he's probably one of the highest IQ, EQ people that I've worked with. The other person is a guy named Varun Parmar, who I reported to for 2.5 years, who is the former CEO of Miro and the CPO at Box.com.
Where can we find you outside of work?
I mean, I have a Substack called Founders Therapy where I just talk a lot about the founder journey. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and then I mean that's pretty much it. Like I'm not really
no hacking, fishing, or anything else.
I mean, what do I do outside of work? I mean, I spend a lot of time fishing and skiing, right? So I do fly fishing.
Thank God. I feel like that's a more normal answer for the tech community. I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing this before it was cool. Like I grew up fishing since I was like 4 years old, so it's like pretty core to my DNA. But yeah, I spend a lot less time fishing and skiing now, as I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old as well.
Love that. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming to the show today. It was such a fun conversation about everything CRM.
Enjoy it, guys. Have a good one.
1 sec. Let me just quickly.